Hey there. This is hopefully going to be a very brief introduction to what we're going to spend a lot of time on the first week of classes, and that is the circle of fifths. If you've seen the flyer for the class or the website that has the same graphic, you've seen this little kind of rainbow drawing, and it starts with C and you get over to F sharp. It's a little bit like a clock, but a really fancy colored one. Don't need to think about it right now, but what they're showing you, what this idea is showing you, is that how the keys are related as we learn all of our scales. Before we can even get into that, we need to talk about what this means, what a fifth is. So just this brief introduction, we're going to practice writing our intervals again. This is something that if you're in this class, you know how to identify basic intervals, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh octave. But let's review it from a writing standpoint. So if I start on, let me start on D. So believe it or not, you can write two D's right next to each other, and then we call it a unison. We don't ever say first, but if two people are singing this note together, then we still say they're singing an interval, and it's called unison. That's also a good way to remember that this is not a first just because you're one step up. This is a second. If you have two different notes, you're already writing a second. And then you just keep going. So I keep writing the D over and over. The D is always the low note. You'll notice that these are sort of next to each other because I can't write, I could write two D's on top of each other, but then you wouldn't see that they were different people or different voices, we say. These, you can't write these on top because they're so close together. Right when you start thirds, you can make them line up over one another. So again, this is about practicing writing just as much as learning theory concepts. If you get better at writing, your eyes will recognize what you see on the page. It's really important. So, as you continue to write, I'll back up and say unison, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, octave. Just like a first has a different word, the eighth has a different word. Okay. I know you might be trying to look. I'll move my hand out of the way as soon as I get our numbers up here. So let's just do a quick drill, right? We already said fifths are going to be important. Let's just practice writing fifths. If I start here, I'm going to give you different starting notes. And see, even is that an F or is it a G? It's not quite touching the F line. I feel like the line goes through it, but even with this fine tip pen, it's difficult for me to get it looking exactly the way I want. Okay, so you've got your series of notes. Now we're going to write fifths above them. You notice if you start on a space, then you skip a space, and you fill in the next space. If you start on a line, middle C is on a line, it's on a ledger line, you skip the next line and you write on the second line up. So here we are on the same note. G, skip B, write D. So essentially you're skipping the third, right? This other note above would be a third, and you're going for the fifth. Okay, so hopefully you followed along with that. Now, let's practice the flip side of this. I'm going to start with the same notes. I'm going to bump the C up here. It's not going to be middle C anymore, but I think, and then the sense I'm being the same, I think everything else will work. What we're going to do is we're going to write a fourth going down from these notes. Not a fifth, but a fourth. So if you look at a fourth, if you start on a space, then a fourth above is on a line. So it's like you're in between this third and fifth step. So you might think go up a third, go up to that next space, and then just go one step higher. But we're going down, so I'm going to go to the D, that space, and then write the next line. Here's C. I'm going to go to the next space. I'm not going to go all the way to the next space, but I'm going to go to a line below that. G. The next line down would be there, so I'm just going to go a step down. Remember, we're writing fourths, not fifths. And then here is that skip, that third, and then I go one step lower. Okay, here it's tricky. I'm on E. C would be my next skip. That would be a third lower. I need the ledger line because I need to write a note lower than that. So the B is the fourth below. Let's do that again. E, D, C, and then B is actually what we want. Okay, so these were fifths, and these were fourths. Now, what I want you to notice, and this is where this lesson will stop. When I wrote a fifth above F, I got C. When I wrote a fourth below F, I also got C. The fourths and fifths are inversions of each other. They can be flipped. So when I wrote a G above this C, and I wrote a fourth below this C, I got a G. This one's a little bit easier because we had to change this one. I wrote a fifth above this G and got D. I wrote a fourth below this G, and I also got D. So check the math. See if your bottom and top notes are the same for these intervals. Now, this might seem like we have not even talked about scales or keys or key signatures or anything. I realize that. But this is our introduction just to be getting used to thinking about intervals and recognizing intervals super fast. That is it for our first lesson. Keep practicing writing your fourths and fifths.